black woman who came down on the elevator, and they made like he
okay. You ready for me?
Yeah. Insulted her or something.
Okay. Okay, just a minute. And I'll ask you some questions. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Today we're interviewing Joba Elizabeth Holderness, who is 98, is that right?
I'll be 99 the 27th of September.
She's 98 years old, will be 99 in September. She was not an eyewitness survivor of the riot, but she was away in college, I believe, at the time, and she did marry Lynn Holderness, and they set up housekeeping in Tulsa, had a grocery store on Greenwood. They were very prominent in the North Tulsa Greenwood community for years. They were civic and business leaders, and her husband was a riot survivor, and so she is his widow and heir. They had quite a bit of property in the Greenwood area. So today we want to talk to you, Mrs. Holderness. We want to know what your husband told you about that day. We have researched and we know all about the elevator incident and what started the riot. We are trying to find information on who exactly lived there, what property they had, the losses, and if there are reparations, who should be paid. Well, you are the heir of Lynn Holderness, so tell us all you know that he told you about that riot and about the losses and his family.
Well, he had property on Greenwood there in 700 block, and
okay, go on.
And he worked at that time at a cleaning and pressing shop for a white cleaning presser. It was on Peoria. I can't remember the name of the shop now. But when the war broke out, instead of the workers at this shop going to military service, the owner of the shop signed contracts to clean military uniforms and whatnot. So that was why he didn't go to the army.
Now you're speaking of World War I, aren't you? World War I. A lot of Tulsans did go to World War I. A lot of Tulsans blacks. In fact, that's one of the underlying causes of the riot, that these World War I soldiers came back with, they had been treated with respect. They had their uniforms, they were given their guns, and they came back expecting to be treated as first-class citizens, and they weren't. But that's interesting. I'd never heard that story about how some of the men did not go to war but worked there at the cleaners where they did a service.
They worked for companies that did service.
Companies that did service for the war.
They shipped the uniforms to and fro, and they cleaned them.
That's interesting.
And pressed them.
I had never heard
and sent
that.
them back to.
Well, see how important these interviews are? Every time we learn something new. Now tell me about the property. You said, what about Cousin Lynn's parents, families? Was he living at home at the time with his parents?
Yeah, there, on Greenwood.
On Greenwood, that was his parents. And what was his parents' name?
His father was named Elijah.
Okay.
Holderness.
Okay, and his mother?
And his mother was named Ellen.
What was her first name? Ellen?
Yeah.
Ellen, okay.
Ellen.
But your husband's dad was Elijah Holderness. His mother was Ella. That they owned a home at 700 North Greenwood. They did own that home?
Yeah.
They owned a home at 700 North Greenwood. And his older sister was married to Samuel Walker. And Samuel Walker's daughter is Joyce Walker, and I have interviewed her. But tell me a little bit about them. Didn't they own a lot of property too in Greenwood? The Walkers? A two-story house?
The Walkers.
Yeah, Samuel and Lily.
Lily Walker, and
That's okay.
oh, Lord, mercy's real.
Well, that's okay. I know that Samuel and Lily had a 2-story house and had a rent house.
A rent house.
And during the riot, you said, did Cousin Lynn, was he with his sister and all when they were walking to Mohawk? Tell me about what they did when the riot started.
When the riot came, no, see, he was living on Greenwood.
Okay.
And they lived farther. They lived on Frankfurt.
Okay.
On down in about 300 block on Frankfurt.
Okay.
And he was one of the founders of Vernon Church. Her husband, Lily's husband, and whatnot. And he had a cleaning shop. And he said he would clean and press the clothes, and he didn't have cars like they have now. He delivered them by hand.
Oh.
And
Now, the day of the riot, Samuel Walker, Joyce, and her little friend Edna Touche, they all went marching to Mohawk Park.
to Mohawk.
Well, where was your husband Lynn and his mother and dad? Did they go to a separate, did they go to Mohawk, or did they go to Convention Center, or where?
Well, I don't really.
You don't know where he
guess
went, but they were not together since they didn't live in the same house.
No,
And
they didn't live.
did he ever tell you what it felt like to be in that riot?
Say what?
Did he tell you what it felt like to be in the riot? Did he see, hear bullets, or what?
It was stressful, and he and a group of men, they got in the basement of Mount Zion Church, and as the whites would come off of Archer Street, coming up Elgin and like that, well, they would shoot, and they killed quite a few white people.
That's an interesting point, that we believe there are more whites who were killed than the record books show, because these men, like her husband, Lynn Holderness, who were under siege at Mount Zion Baptist Church, were heavily armed, and they did shoot those whites who came just down the street in the open, coming to try to get them out of Mount Zion. They mowed down those whites, so we think that there's been a cover-up also of the number of white dead, because as she's saying, there were 2 or 3 assaults on Mount Zion. We know that for a fact. We have eyewitness accounts of that. So those whites were just mown down as they tried to come out in the open and try to take over Mount Zion. Eventually they did. They were able to do it, and we have the records on the last accounts of some of the black men who were holed up at Mount Zion trying to hold off. But eventually they were, they came out with their arms up, and some were shot dead even though they had surrendered. But that is an interesting story that we're looking for, and this is one of the few survivors' accounts, or if she was married to one of the persons, that does talk about that Mount Zion siege.
Yeah.
And you say he told you that there were more whites killed than the papers let on.
Well, there were a lot of whites killed, and of course they tried to keep that from the public. But there were a few Negroes who worked for these wealthy white people, like Skelly, rich white people and things, and they lived in quarters, they call, in the backyard of these big houses. They had a garage on one side and what they call quarters, a bedroom and kitchen and bath and things, where the women who worked there cooks and housekeepers and things, they lived in those, what they call quarters. And it was kind of, some of them were, you know, nice to them all, but they didn't pay people much, $7 and $10 a week like that. And the people women who worked there did the cooking, most of them, and the housekeeping, and took care of the babies and whatnot. And they, at night, a lot of time after they taking care of the babies all day and whatnot, and cook and go out to their quarters sometime, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and then they'd have to take the babies out there and keep them all night, because the babies would cry to go with the go with the women who had been taking care of them through the day. And of course that was an excuse for them, the mothers, to get rid of the babies at night.
That is fascinating, and many of the survivors of the riot have told me about how they were hidden in those quarters. Sometimes the boss drove down right through the riot and picked up, they knew that Tulsa was under siege, and they took them to those quarters. So that's interesting, that the way you have described the quarters, and that is very helpful.
Some of them were kind.
Yes, yes. Now back to the property. Was Cousin Lynn's family's house burned down there on Greenwood? Of course, all Greenwood was burned. So they lost their home, did they? Okay. Did they lose anything else? Did they have a car or anything of value? Car, jewelry, clothing? They lost everything, did they?
They lost everything. They said they came in houses and set fire. First, they took out their, like, people had silverware, and some few of them had nice china dishes and furniture, some, you know, nice things. They took those things out first before they set the houses afire, and said they set the curtains afire, and then of course the fire would go all around and burn the houses down.
Well, I sure thank you for this. That helps us tremendously with our report. And you've given me some good information, and I thank you very much for this. Kevin, you have anything to ask her? She's not a Booker T. Washington graduate, I know that. She finished in Texas.
We won't hold that against
her. Well, some of the people, they said, walked all the way to Claremore in places, you know, getting away from them.
Yeah, I heard that.
I've heard that. Yeah.
You hear anything about some black residents from Muskogee coming to Tulsa during the race riot to help out the black folks? You hear any stories like that?
Say what?
We have heard stories that there was a black group of men called the Brotherhood of Africans, and there's a report that some of them came from Muskogee to help their black brothers who were under siege. Do you know anything about that? They were kind of the forerunner. They also contacted the NAACP and told them things that were happening here. Have you heard anything about the blacks in Muskogee who came here to help the blacks in Tulsa?
Well, I think he talked about it, but it was, I guess, kind of after the...
Oh, you're thinking after
well,
the...
I don't know, but during the first part of it, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
How long have you been a member of First, Ms. Holderness? How long have you been a member of First Baptist Church?
I've been a member of First Baptist Church 74 years.
74 years. Oh.
I came here in 1925, and this is 99. And I'll be 99 years old the 27th of September.
Between you and Miss Mabel Little, y'all holding down the fort of these churches in here in Tulsa.
What's that?
I said between you and Mabel Little, y'all holding down these churches here.
Oh.
She's over at Mount Zion. I think she's what,
at Mount
105?
Zion. I'm at First Baptist.
And Miss Gibbs got Vernon. So
Yeah.
they got it covered.
You sure do.
Well, tell me, do you know if First Baptist Church was damaged in the riot, or did it survive? Do you know anything about, First Baptist being destroyed?
First Baptist Church. Yeah, when I came in 25, I joined First Baptist Church up on Archer Street. And it was built after the riot.
Oh, okay.
Although I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
But they had a mortgage on the church, and they foreclosed it because people wasn't making much money those days. But he and Goodwin, old man Goodwin, they paid the mortgage off of the church.
Wow.
And of course they unlocked it, and the church was able to go on and use it. But and then finally, when we bought a new church, built the new church on Greenwood, they put up the old church for sale. And my husband tried to get a group of people, blacks, to go in and buy it and convert it into apartments or something, because people were coming here from Suburban, Okmulgee, and things to work. And they didn't have apartments those days like they have now. They had to drive to and fro and just stay with different people in the home. But he couldn't get enough people to go in with it, so he borrowed money. There was an old white fella here who used to loan money to churches and things. I don't know why I can't think of his name.
But that's okay. That's enough information that I need on. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we got to run on and do Eunice Jackson now.
Okay.
And thank you. That was real helpful.
Well,
You gave me some good information.
well, sometime I guess I can't remember all.
You're doing good. What was your mother's name?
Betty Pierce, Pearce.
Okay. Now, tell me about Samuel Jackson. You married him, how many years? You married him when you were, what, 18, wasn't you?
No, I was 21.
Oh, you were 21.
We married in 1923.
Okay. Okay. East Archer. And of course that one burned to the ground, didn't it? And then he moved where? Well, actually that's all I need to know. The one that burned in the riot is the one. Did he also own a home anywhere? Or did he live over the funeral home? Did you tell me that?
I don't know where he lived during the riot. I think he was rooming.
Oh, okay.
I think he lived with at the Howell Rooms during the riot.
Okay. Okay. And somebody else I interviewed said that they went over to try to help Samuel Jackson save he had a brand new ambulance, and that was what they were most concerned with, to keep that ambulance. And he said, drive it away before it gets any bullets. So he was trying to get there to drive the new ambulance away.
Wonder
But
who that was.
it was Otis Clark, 96-year-old Otis Clark. Do you know Otis Clark?
I thought Otis was dead.
No, ma'am.
Is he here?
I interviewed him.
Where'd you see him?
He came about a month ago. He was here for a big,
Azusa.
what's it called? Azusa. That religious
Carlton
thing.
Pearson down at
Carlton Pierce's.
Oh,
He was
he
here, and I
didn't
got him
come
on
to
tape.
see
He
me.
didn't know where
No.
you were, I guess. He was fascinated. He said and it didn't work, so that brand new ambulance got shot full of bullet holes. So he couldn't get out, he couldn't get it out in time. So, so your husband lost everything. If the funeral home burned to the ground, that means he lost all of his equipment.
Everything.
He lost ambulances. Okay. That's what I want you to talk about on the tape. And then also I want you to tell me about what it was like for you and your mother and how you all fled down Mohawk and the bullet zinging after you. You've told me that before. So you lost of all equipment, ambulances, including a brand new one. Interviewing Eunice Jackson, age 95, who is a survivor of the Tulsa race riot of 1921. When I first started doing research on this, I located 17 survivors. Eunice Jackson was one of the first I located, and she's been most gracious to be interviewed, to give information on the riot, and we're just delighted to be here today. We want to get her on record today about the incident of the riot, how it affected her personally, also how it affected Samuel Malone Jackson, whom she married in 1923. And she is the widow of Jackson. And Mrs. Jackson was a 16-year-old junior. She was getting ready for the end of school at Booker T. Washington High School. And like other girls, she was probably getting ready for the prom. In 1923, she would marry Samuel Malone Jackson, who owned Jackson's Funeral Home. He was one of the most prominent business people in the Greenwood and Archer area. His funeral home was at 615 East Archer, 617 East Archer, which crosses Greenwood. So she's going to be talking about her own personal experiences and also about Samuel Jackson and the riot. Mrs. Jackson, thank you so much for sharing with us today. First tell me about your experiences, you and your mother, and how you had to flee your home and where you went and how that riot affected you. Then tell me about what it did to your future husband's funeral home.
Now the night of the riot, we were sitting out in our yard. And the people started coming through the gate, just running through, going out the back. So they came so fast, my mother finally asked them where were they going. And they said they were having a riot over the hill, which was known then as the Brickyard Hill. We lived north of that. And they were just running, didn't know where they were going. And must have been about 8 o'clock in the morning, we persuaded Mama to let us go and get with the crowd. We didn't know where we were going. And when we got to Pine and Greenwood, the Home Guard had come from Oklahoma City. And they stopped us there. And they marched us from there down Pine to Cincinnati, from Cincinnati and Pine down to where the
Mohawk?
no, downtown on Brady. What is that?
Oh, the convention?
Convention Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got to the convention hall, they searched us before they would let us go in. And my mother had picked up my oldest brother's service revolver before we left home and had it in a little satchel. And they wanted to see it, and she said, I don't have anything in here but some important papers. So one of them said, well, old dogs have new tricks like young ones. And they searched and took the pistol and gave her the bag back. So we went in and found us a seat. And we sat there until I guess must have been about 4 o'clock in the evening when a white family my mother worked for had been there twice to ask about us because she had given her name. And we didn't ever answer. So when they finally turned us loose and said, if you have a home that you think you might go to, you may be excused. So we walked from the convention hall to 1145 North Denver, where she had food prepared for us. And when we left, she said, well, Betty, you can go home. And if you don't have a home, said you come back and we'll put some cots up in the basement for you. But we had some real poor white neighbors who lived across the street. And every time the firebugs would come to set the fire to our house, these white folks would come over there and put it out. That's how we happened to have a home after the riot. And then I don't know how they got these little cards printed so fast, but everybody had a little ID card. School children and all told what you did, and you had to have that little ID wherever you went. I kept mine for a long time and eventually got rid of it. I don't know what happened to it. But from then on, it's been so long. I don't think what happened after then.
Well, tell me about your husband in the funeral home. What happened to his funeral home? Your future husband.
They destroyed the funeral home down on, partially destroyed it. It was on Archer Street then. And Mr. McBurney had a funeral home, white. And he came down, he said, well, Jackson, if you get some bodies or something before you can get on your feet, so just bring them over to my funeral home and we'll take care of them for you. And from then on, I don't know.
You did tell me in an earlier interview that McBurney and 2 or 3, McCune, and I think one other funeral home were ordered by the city to embalm the few black bodies that were embalmed. Since Jackson, who did most of the black embalming, his funeral home was destroyed, the city ordered these 2 or 3, McCune and McBurney, I know, and I think one other, ordered them, if they had a few bodies to be embalmed. Now we do know the commission has found that most of the black bodies were buried in graves and speedily Oak Lawn and Booker T, what is now, what used to be Booker T Cemetery way out on 91st. And there are rumors that some were just incinerated in Sand Springs.
I don't believe that.
And other rumors are that some were dumped in the Arkansas River. But we do know the bodies were decaying. It was urgent to get something done with the bodies so that there would not be an epidemic of disease. And I understand those 2 funeral homes that were embalming a few of the black bodies hired your husband and that he stayed at the funeral home. Didn't you tell me that he stayed there?
I don't think he stayed there. I really don't know where he stayed.
But he did embalm for those white funerals.
Yeah, McBurney is the only one I can remember at that time.
And I think you told me they paid him $25 per body. Or maybe I read that in the statistics or something.
Well, I don't know what they paid.
Okay. I have found that we have those records in our Riot Commission, and that your husband did do the embalming. In fact, I think the record shows that he actually stayed in the quarters behind the funeral home and embalmed for about 3 weeks straight, and that he got $25 per body. We do know that one of the bodies he embalmed was Dr. Jackson, this famous Dr. Jackson that was had trained at the Mayo Clinic and was shot by some ruffians, young teenage mobsters. Even after he had surrendered, they said he had come in from treating people, and had his little satchel and was ordered to put his hands up, which he did, and he still was shot. Was taken to Convention Hall. I have interviewed some survivors who saw him there at Convention Hall lying wounded, and he died of his wounds, and your husband is the one who embalmed him. So we thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Well, thank you. You know, all this is every once in a while, something comes up.
Oh, well, if you remember anything new, you just give me a call and we'll come back and record it.
I got some questions for you, ma'am. What church did you go to then?
Vernon,
Vernon?
AME.
Was it destroyed in the riot as well?
No, we part of it was.
Okay. And understand, do you remember the Jv Stratford Hotel?
The Stratford?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you give us a description? What do you remember most about the Jv? I've been hearing all kinds of
The
details.
Stratford Hotel was something else. Because
Real
they
nice.
had a ballroom there,
And this was most of the proms were given. Well, most of the high school proms were done at the Jv Stratford Hotel.
at that time the hotel was new.
Oh, the hotel was.
Yeah, Stratford Hotel was new during the riot. It had just been put up down there.
Get out of here. So that means that that was Mount Zion and the Stratford Hotel were both new buildings.
Yeah,
That they went out and really destroyed.
Stratford was a beautiful two-story hotel. Rooms upstairs, the ballroom downstairs.
Now, you said that you attended school. What school was that?
Huh?
What school did you graduate from?
Booker T. Washington.
Washington. And do you remember getting any kind of damage in a race ride?
Me?
No, the Booker T. Washington school. Was it damaged? Do you recall?
I don't think so at that time. I don't think the school was damaged.
Well, you know, last year Booker T. Washington celebrated, matter of fact, it's still celebrating its 85 years of existence.
I understand they're fixing to build a new school.
Yeah, that's going to be the next fight, and you know.
Where are they going to build it?
Right in the interlock behind the school, and they're going to tear down most of the old stuff, but keep the Rotondo area, you know, where the Hornet is and stuff, and make that into like a gallery and community room. What did you remember most about? What is some of your fondest memories of Booker T. Washington? What's something that jumps out?
All the kids were proud of Booker T. That's what we always refer to as Booker T.
Did you have any? Yeah, go ahead.
And when, especially at Thanksgiving time, there was an envy between Muskogee High School and Booker T. Every other Thanksgiving, we were either in Muskogee at the football game or here. And the kids were proud of Booker T.
And do you, I know there is work in progress about putting a historical marker where the old Booker T was and put a memorial for E.W. Woods. Do you remember him at all?
Mr. Woods?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, he was my favorite teacher.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
And after I finished school and got married, Mr. Woods came out one Sunday morning, and he always called the kids by their surnames. He said, "Clone, how's everything?" And I said, "Well, about as usual, Mr. Woods." He said, "How you doing in your business?" I said, "I'll be here trying to make it, that's all." He said, what I came out to tell you this morning was, I've got $2,000 laying up here in the bank. If you need it, let me know and I'll go get it for you.
Wow.
I said, "Mr. Woods, that certainly is a nice gesture and I thank you. But right now I'm trying to make it on my own. But if the time comes when I need something, I won't forget to ask you." He said, well, it's up there and you can have it if you need it.
Wow.
That is the kind of relationship between students and teachers.
That's right.
Oh, what a wonderful story. She touched upon one thing I want to comment on, Stratford, the Stratford Hotel and the Stratford. Stratford had to flee Tulsa after the riot. He was charged with inciting it, and he was a prominent attorney also. And he fled and never did return to Tulsa. And there was a ceremony a couple of years ago that was to exonerate him. And Representative Don Ross was in charge of that mission. And they had a beautiful program where he was exonerated, and all kind of awards were given to his offspring. And speaking of Chicago, that's where he fled to and wrote a book about this. His relatives still live in Chicago. And speaking of Chicago, there's a lot of interest in this Tulsa race riot. It's gaining national and international attention. It has been the focus of stories in the national news, and Berlin, Germany sent documentary producer here to do a story. London, England sent a BBC person here to do a story on the race riot. Copenhagen, Denmark, Montreal, Canada, and all across the nation there's interest in this riot. On May 16th, the Chicago Tribune ran an article about the Tulsa race riot and interviewed some of the survivors who were featured in this production, this Cavision production by Kevin Ross. It featured an article in the Chicago Tribune newspaper. As a result of that, people have come forward. We've located 3 survivors in Chicago that we didn't know about as a result of all this media. Website, the Oklahoma Historical Society, and the Tulsa Race Riot Commission has a website. We located 3 survivors in Chicago that we didn't know about. 83-year-old twin sisters,
Who were they?
Janetta and Arnetta McNeil, that's their maiden names, and Teresa McNeil Gilliam. She's 87 and the twins are 83. And so that was just wonderful, locating them and locating some of the survivors of Stratford. And as a result of that article in the Tribune, a talk show, WVON Chicago, a cable network series, 3 days later had an hour-and-a-half long talk show about the Tulsa race riot. Hannibal Johnson and I were invited guests, and we took calls from people who had heard about the riot or wanted to know more about it, took calls from people who used to live in Tulsa, and it was a wonderful program. So this information on the riot is getting out, and we thank people like you for sharing with us, because we learned.
Did you ever talk with Ernestine Gibbs?
Oh yes, we've got Mrs. Gibbs. We've
Julius Williams?
Where is Julius? I can't get in touch with him. Do you know where he lives? He's on my list to contact. I'll get it from
I
Reverend
tell you how you
McCutcheon.
can find Reverend McCutcheon.
That's
He's
what
a good
I'll do.
member over there.
We'll get in touch. So we do thank people like Mrs. Jackson for putting us in touch with other survivors and for generously sharing information with us every time we come. So we do thank you so much.
I'm just glad to always see you.
Good, good. Okay, well that does it. We'll get on to another one.
I'm still here.
Copy this one, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Are you going to ask me the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Hold on, let me, hold on, I'm gonna come back to those. Those are
Okay.
great pictures there. Wow.
Okay. And Mrs.
This was a
Smith knows that there was a Raulerson grocery.
Okay.
The interview today is with Myrtle Raulerson. She is the widow of Lloyd Reed Raulerson, who was a prominent Tulsa pharmacist, business owner, had a grocery store, and she herself is not a survivor of the riot. She lived in Oklahoma, but not in Tulsa at the time of the riot, but her husband did, and she is his widow and heir. She's going to tell us about Lloyd Reed Raulerson, about the property they owned, what happened to it the day of the riot, how it affected their lives, where they hid during the riot, those kind of things. So, Mrs. Raulerson, thank you for sharing this information with us today. Okay.
Lloyd Reed Raulerson, my husband, lived with his family at 521 North Greenwood in two-story building. They had a grocery store downstairs and a rooming house upstairs. There were 3 girls and a boy. The riot was on the west side of Greenwood, and 521 is on the east side of Greenwood. So the building was not burned, but they suffered the fear and everything that went along with it. Reed said he hid in the icebox. And his brother-in-law, at that time was not his brother-in-law, his sister's boyfriend, hid in the doghouse. And incidentally, it frightened my brother-in-law so much until he moved out in the country, right next to the junior college. Reed said it was terrifying. His mother was one of the founders of Christ Temple CME Church, and it was very traumatic for her because she helped rebuild Christ Temple. Christ Temple was located on Frankfurt at the time. And it was 4 years after they built the Christ Temple that it was burned. And with the excitement of having a new church and having to sponsor activities to build the new church, she suffered to the extent that one night she was giving a speech at Christ Temple and fell dead with a heart attack. We felt that all of that came from the trauma of the riot. Incidentally, just a month before she passed away, she lost her daughter. Reed said during those days he drove a jitney. He didn't tell me whether or not the jitney was a part of the riot or part of the aftermath, but I imagine it was right along then because he didn't attend Meharry Medical College until 1925. He graduated in 1925. So he had a little time left because he was born in 1901, really. And so he must have been 20 by then. Are there any other questions?
I think that about does it. You gave us some background. We know the house address, and the commission is looking at census records and property records and damage and so forth. So, but it's still very helpful to hear from someone who knew the place, who's seen the place, who knew the people. And this gives it that oral history touch that is so important to history. So we thank you so much for sharing this with us.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right.
That was good.
Yeah.
Our next interview is with Mrs. Bulah Laure Keenan Smith, age 91. Mrs. Smith was 92. And Mrs. Smith was born in Lovell, Oklahoma, and she said it was a little white town, and she thinks she was the first black baby born in that little white town. Her father was part Indian and light-skinned. Her mother was light-skinned, so maybe they didn't know they were black people.
Well,
She will tell us a little bit about how they came to live there. During the riot, Mrs. Smith lived in Tulsa, and she's going to tell us about that riot. And of all the pioneers, the survivors we've talked to, she has the most extensive pictures. She has some pictures that I have not seen before, and I'm very familiar with the pictures of the riot at Tulsa Historical Society, at the University of Tulsa, private collections like Burl Ford's, and the Houston photos that were given to me by former Channel 6 news photographer. But she has pictures of the little type buggy they escaped in. She has a picture.
I want to tell you about that.
And she will tell us about that in a minute. And then Kevin Ross, our videographer, will take some close-up pictures of these riot pictures, which we have not seen before. So Mrs. Smith, we thank you for sharing this information with us today. And would you just tell us, first of all, about that little town you were born in, how you came to live in Tulsa, how you all came to survive this riot?
Where I was born, we didn't come from that town to Tulsa.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Lovell, Oklahoma. We moved from Lovell to a place called Meeker. And Then from there, we moved to Wellston, Oklahoma. I remember that. And then we moved from Wellston to Chandler, Oklahoma, out in the country.
Okay.
And then we moved from there to a little place called Davenport, Oklahoma. And then in 1916, yes. Well, my dad was working here in Tulsa, and he came back and moved the family to Tulsa.
Okay.
And we lived over on Reading, and Reading in Norfolk, with some people named Giles. And I met the Curtises, the Reverend Curtis and his family. I think they had children my age. The kids and I went to school together. And when the race riot came, there was an old man by the name of Melton Cook. He came to us one night. He told me, Keenan, you better get your family out of here. They're killing niggers uptown. Coming this way. Hurry up and get them out. You know, we were sleeping around 11 o'clock at night. So then we got up and we went up to the Curtises and finished up the night. Papa didn't go with us. He stayed in Tulsa. And we went out here. So the road comes down to Turley. And we went, I think, still on Lewis, because my brother, wherever it was walking distance, and my brother looked like the boys where we went. The Greens is where we went. And anyway, when we arrived at the greenhouse, or the Greens' house, well, we couldn't stay up at the house because the road come down close, and was afraid of a stranger would come down through there. It might be somebody, to harm them. And they had a huge hog pen. And those great big sourdough reeds, or some kind of reeds, they grow about this tall and have long finger-looking pink flowers on them. Well, we went down in there and stayed. There was some more people out there, but they acted like, I don't know if you know, been around chickens or guineas, but these people would be talking and be one standing up watching. And every time a car come down, they duck down, and everybody would get quiet.
So you actually hid in those plants?
And those weeds,
Those
yes.
weeds?
Yeah, in that hog pen.
In the hog pen.
And I had the picture I showed you here, not this one, that one, down there. It was all but this on here. I wanted to show you. I said a one-horse thing, you remember I talked to you? It was just like this, only it didn't have the top to it. And Eli, the boy, the Curtis boy, drove this out there. It was my mother and us 4 children, and I counted the Curtises. I think there was about 4 of them, plus their mother. And that's where.
And you were in this kind of
something like this.
Okay.
See, I wanted to show you, because you said you had never heard of it.
No, ma'am.
And we stayed overnight, but they let the women stay in the place, granary, I guess you call it, anyway, where they kept seed. The men didn't stay there. And I leaned against the back of a board, and my back bothers me yet.
Oh, you think your back problem goes back to that?
Because I was, sit down in a position like that, and I was laying flat and was trying to make room for the other kids, to, because I had cotton seed up in there.
So you got your back injured during the riot?
My back.
Bless your heart.
So anyway, that's all I can tell you about that.
Did you go to some shelter after that? I heard, did you go to some shelter where they gave you food and you didn't do that? You didn't go to shelter?
Because when we came back, we could just come on back. They didn't bother. When they got out, Man Brothers was still standing there, see, and they had food there. And they took food out of.
Now, which Man Brothers was this? I know there was.
McKinley.
McKinley.
Did I show you his picture?
No, ma'am.
So? Priscilla?
Is it somewhere?
Yeah, she was.
Oh, he got it over there.
McKinley and Obie man had the store.
Now, one of the stores was burned, but this
No, that was the other
McKinley's.
store, but not
No,
McKinley's
Max.
store. Max, but there was another brother that had the store, had a store on
Oh,
Greenwood.
yeah, his store.
William
JD.
Okay, so
That's
JD's
my grandfather.
JD's store was burned,
Uh-huh.
but not MM's.
Not McKinley and Obie.
Okay.
It was McKinley and Obie man
See,
that had the
Max-
Man Brothers store.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Max, M.M., oh no, this man on Greenwood, J.D.
JD, he had a store by himself.
Okay. And it was burned.
Uh-huh.
The Max, they were on Lansing in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Mac and Obie.
Now they were on the corner of Lansing and Oklahoma. Huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You,
Mac and Obie.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
They called them Man Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, we were the Man Brothers.
So that was still standing when you all came
yeah.
back. Okay. And
Oh,
they had
we lived
food.
just below there.
Oh, and they didn't bother that part. Okay. Okay.
I don't know why Obie isn't on these pictures, but this is some of the
Right
first
here in
pictures.
Tulsa.
Uh-huh.
See, that's Mac. You knew him, I'm sure. You met him. Where
Yeah.
is he? Right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now that's Augusta Mann's late husband.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But us, he wasn't married to
Her at that time.
Oh,
Augusta.
okay.
He was married to this girl called Comfort,
Oh, okay.
Polk,
Okay.
and they're the mother to the boys.
Okay. Okay. Well, these are interesting. Let's see this.
And them school pictures
Oh.
taken after the
Now,
riot.
did you go to Booker T. Washington then? Is this Booker T. Washington?
No, that's Dunbar.
Oh, Dunbar.
That's some great, I never seen
I
that.
should have been in Booker T. I
Oh.
was in the senior class when they opened up school
Uh-huh.
again.
Oh.
Cause see, my school got burned.
Okay.
Dunbar got burned.
Yes. yes.
And I was supposed to go to the 6th grade.
Uh-huh.
And when the riot was over, they didn't have no school, so we had to go to churches.
Oh.
And Mr. Braxton was my teacher. And we had to go to a Christian church, what they call Christian church, little colored churches. And then they built, you can see more of how the school, after they built it.
Oh, yes.
And my baby sister is standing there
Okay.
in front of the school.
Okay.
And I hated, they tore it down.
Oh, I did too.
And
I drove by
I
one
said,
day and it was
why in the
down.
world couldn't, of all places, why couldn't they go to work and leave that for a landmark?
I
And
was-
all they have is just a pillar like.
Yeah. I was upset too when they tore down Dunbar.
Did you go to school?
No, I didn't. I'm from Okmulgee, the Preston Okmulgee area. But my dad's cousin was Mildred P. Williams, who taught there. That's my dad's cousin.
I knew her real well.
Well, that was my dad's first cousin. She's a Pettit. See, I'm of the Pettit family, where her grandmother was my grandmother, my dad's grandmother. So we're cousins.
Oh,
yes, yeah.
Well, I know some Pettis here in Tulsa.
Well, Cynthia, and she
Oh.
lived in the
What's his name?
Bankhead.
Oh,
Troy.
belongs to my church.
What church do you go to?
I belong to Church of Christ.
That's my folks. Vivian, Troy, Terry.
Small
That's
world.
you would have let me in if you'd known I was a Pettit.
You'll find somebody.
Mother, Furman, that was my dad who died 2 years ago. Yes, ma'am. And Troy, you know, everybody loves Troy. Terry.
Pettis there right up the street.
Yeah, on the
Oh,
Newton.
no.
I'm the oldest of the Pettit children. See, you didn't. Small world. Well, I thank
Small
you for
Tulsa.
sharing this with me. Kevin, you have anything to ask about schools?
Oh,
Because I'm through.
definitely.
He's going to ask you something about the schools.
Okay.
He's
Before
doing-
going to school, you mentioned the fact of Christ Temple, and I do believe if I did my research well, I think was any of the Franklin
Now
family a
listen,
part of
dear.
it? At Christ Temple Church, was any of the Franklin family?
John Hope Franklin.
John Hope Franklin.
It was on Frankfurt.
No. Do you know anything about Dr. John Hope Franklin?
Oh, do I know?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know him too well, but when I married, I met some of his people because I lived not far from where he was born. but he was here in Tulsa. He was here somewhere.
Yes.
And his dad was a lawyer, attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
And what school did you end up graduating from since they tore down Dunbar? Dunbar was destroyed. What
I
school?
know. I didn't. See, I was in grade school.
Oh, okay, okay.
See, I was behind with my class because of sickness.
Mm-hmm.
And then too, I wanted to be a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I was kind of. I'm not going to tell you I was smart, but I was A class. But
Who inspired you, or what inspired you to be a teacher? Why a teacher?
when I first started going to school out in the country, there was a lady named Ellen Crawford, my first teacher, and she stayed with us. I just wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't make it. But sometimes after they built Dunbar and Brother Braxton was out there, I kind of substituted a little bit for them because they wouldn't get another teacher sometimes.
Mm.
But that's been my desire, was my desire.
Well, it seemed like you did feel it to some degree.
Well, as I grew up, since I didn't get to teach, say, public school, I didn't think I went far enough. Well, got to be a Bible teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Most every church I affiliate with,
Mm-hmm.
except in this one where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
The men folks, they lead out there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in the Church of the Living God, I taught. And then I united with the Baptist Church because it wasn't a church where I was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back to Tulsa. I moved away, and then I came back to Tulsa and up until '88. Well, then I kept some kind of position in the church. I was at Cornerstone Baptist Church. And out in West Tulsa, South Haven, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had belonged to Mount Olive Baptist Church, which was a portion of Shiloh Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've always kept, worship the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Then my son, he started driving a bus for the Church of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
Northfield Church of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't walk. And so I came over and united with them, and I'm there now.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I met Troy and them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what you say, Troy's daddy's name was Vic.
Furman.
He's the one told me what kind of nationality I was.
Oh, yes. Well, he was always fascinated by how people looked, I guess.
Yeah, I'll come up and came in the hallway one day, and he was sitting there. He said, "What nation do you belong to?"
Yes.
What nation?
I said, "I don't know."
Mm.
He said, "You're a Cherokee."
Well, you
I
look
said,
in.
"Well, I knew I had something in me, but I didn't know what."
I think a lot of us are in that same boat. But thank you so much,
Oh, that
Anna,
was
for giving us a
fascinating.
glimpse of what
But
Tulsa was.
Now, Kevin, you got some close-ups of those pictures.
Okay.
And so far as Mildred, I went to school with her.
Oh, yeah.
She was
Kevin, these are the best man. I've got some man pictures in my book, but they're not this good because they were not from the originals. Look, these
Oh,
are,
man, those
look
are
at
real
those.
sharp.
Get 2 of those.
Well, I just got those out to let you know that
Yes, ma'am. Those are.
because now Priscilla was born in 1921.
Oh. And then, Kevin, I want you to get this
I wanna
done.
get all
Get,
of them.
yeah, get
I
these
wanna
done.
see
She was
Oh, yeah.
born, the ride was in June and she was born in October.
Yes, that's all right.
Now I've been trying to think just exactly where that location is.
Yeah, I've been trying to study that too, because I got a copy of the picture, and I know it's facing north. It's going towards north. And that might be like Lansing. area.
Don't let me put my hand in your way.
I'll be out the way. Just a second.
No, they had just, during the riot, they had been too long built Mount Zion Baptist Church,
Oh, yeah.
and they burned that down.
And then, but they paid off their loan, and that was so touching. They paid off.
I was trying to think who the minister was there. I think his name was Whitaker.
Yes.
And
I've
because
heard.
he had, I went to school with his daughter, Helen. And there was two girls out on my nose. And like Brother Monroe,
Now, tell me, I hear a lot of folks been saying the word jitney. What is a jitney?
a jitney.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'll tell you about the jitney. Over on the Lansing side, see, we stayed on the Lansing side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what this is for, let me tell you about that too, brother. That's not really not a picture of the rod, but I wanted her to see what kind of wagon we went away in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, we had to walk to town, but there was a man named Simon Berry
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
But,
airplane guy.
with his cars in service. And then they bought those two-seated Fords.
Mm.
They had no top on them. And they ran from Mann Brothers to downtown. And the first driver of that one on Lansing side was named H.M. Gray. And then we had the next one was a dark guy named Jeff Bradley. And everybody was crazy about him.
Oh. So really,
That was our transportation.
That's what I was going to tell her.
her.
I was going to tell her that was our original transportation, Kevin, and it was so powerful that I mentioned that in Chicago, that on the Chicago radio show.
Now,
That was transportation. It was the forerunner of the buses.
That's right.
And it was so important that the city of Tulsa bought him out.
Yes,
And he
but
made-
after he got buses, because he used to own
But-
Lincoln Park.
And he made sure that they would hire black bus drivers
Uh-huh.
to do the
Yeah.
Tulsa North.
Especially on the
Now
north
you
side.
On the north side,
you
and he
said
did
that
sell it.
Had to do what is the
He
black-
used to own, he bought the first buses for the north side.
What's now Lacey Park used
It's
to
Lacey
be.
Park, and that
And
used
there
to
Because
be.
it originally named Berry Park.
Yes.
Now, why
Yeah.
they changed it to Lincoln?
Well,
Oh, well, he got in trouble with the government and the
Oh,
taxes and stuff like that. They took it away from him.
oh, wow. Oh, wow. Now that,
So the
boy.
city named it after, first it was Lincoln, and now it's
Lacey.
Lacey.
Well, get something with Barry on it, because that's a historical figure, no matter what kind of trouble.
But he was the first one to do this.
he sure was, and it was so
But see, he was
significant.
making too much money. They had to get him for something.
It was envious of him there. That's pretty much the whole deal there.
That little person on there with the gloves, that's my baby sister.
Oh, that's
And-
Dunbar Elementary.
Okay.
And this is their exercises they had.
Some. This is a May Day program, and this one is a.
Is
May
this
Day
some-
parade.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Braxton and the boys.
You want to get them individually.
Yeah.
And
See-
this is, look at these boys.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is
See,
beautiful.
that's
Do they
a,
have
I think I got
uniform?
it.
What about all those hats? Are they?
Is that from the war from 1919?
this is a school group.
Oh.
And I'm trying to think why
Like
they,
ROTC.
why they
Yeah,
all
Mr.
are dressed alike.
Well,
It look like
this-
army deals.
that's what I tried to tell my niece. See, this is the same group,
Oh.
and someone enlarged that.
Uh-huh.
But this is the girls. They danced, you know, like here. They had drills, and the boys. They were dressed like soldiers.
That's what I was getting at. They're
See?
dressed like soldiers. That is beautiful.
Okay.
So,
Now that one is the same as taken. That was taken the same day this was, but it was a different scene. Down there where Dunbar School is now.
are
Mhm.
your little
I mean
dolls?
where it
Used to be.
Is this little doll very old?
That's my great niece's doll.
Oh, okay.
She's
great grandmother's. I said, whoa.
The little girl up there. Oh, that's her.
Oh, I see.
That's her
Oh,
granddaughter's.
okay.
But the outfit, it looked like from a long time ago, kind of.
No, I knew C.S. Was this C.S. Roberts? Anyway, he
Charles
used to
Roberts.
teach school and then he had a drugstore.
Oh,
Yeah, you remember, did you know Charles Roberts?
no, I didn't.
I see you got lips like Troy.
Yeah, everybody said I looked like Troy. I'm the oldest of the 8.
Oh, you
And
are.
you said you wanted to be a teacher. I did too. And I taught for 22 years. And there are 8 of us kids and 7 of us are teachers.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. So we love teaching too.
I saw your mother not too long ago.
She was at church Sunday. And she's going to be at church this Sunday, I think.
I love her.
Oh, she's,
In fact, I love everybody.
yes, ma'am.
But
See, you were a little nervous about having me come. If you'd known who I was, you wouldn't have been nervous.
On top, yeah, you end up finding out you got kinfolk, scared of your own kinfolk.
But that's a beautiful experience when you cross ties like that.
Yes.
It's just so magical.
Yeah, well, usually in Beggs, everybody claims kin.
Yes, yes. We do.
If they're Indians, they all claim kin.
And the
I tell you.
Pettits are the same
Yeah,
way.
well, I know some more petties that
And Tamissa,
lived out in South Haven.
Tamissa was, as I say, being Indian, all of them come from around Beggs. They all claim kin.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when you start tracing the families all back in there, they something.
They sure are.
Well, you guys encouraged me to really get that genealogy done.
Yes, that is important. Well, this was good. Not only did we get a good interview, some good pictures.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you were here too.
I'm gonna give you my card, man, because I might want to come back and get some more pictures.
Well,
These
these
turn out to
about these. This is of the store, and I don't know who all these is in the back.
Oh, that's okay.
But that's my dad right there,
Okay.
and that's Matt McKinney, the one you all know,
Okay.
Augustus. There was another brother, but I don't know why he's not on there.
Talking about JD? Oh, you talking about Obi?
O.B. the baby.
Oh, let me give you my card.
Okay. All right, okay.
And that first book is the one that has a lot about Tamissa. And Tamissa's in the second book. My
But
second
see,
book has a
Tamissa's
picture.
also up there at the university.
I did that.
You
And,
did?
and that I
Uh-huh.
did the story underneath her.
Uh-huh.
And that's
And
where I
worked with
work.
the photographer to get, and he works up there at the
Uh-huh,
university.
uh-huh.
And she's featured in my second book, which
Uh-huh.
which grew out of that exhibit up there.
I
So,
saw that. But that's she was in Miss Black Tulsa. Let me go up there for
oh, let's see.
that. She was one of the pages. My
Oh,
granddaughter was
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
pages.
Oh, and then you
And
saw
that's
these.
when
Uh-huh.
we were in
Oh,
that particular room
yeah, you
for the
saw
first kickoff.
Uh-huh.
And so that's
Oh,
when
I
we
was
went
there that
around.
day.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I was
So
there.
you saw Tamissa.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my granddaughter was the youngest one in the thing. She was the
Oh.
one that said Harriet Tubman poem that she's been saying all over town. I tell her she doesn't have to learn another poem now. I said, you're going to wear that one out.
Oh.
But she gets up to say
And it's so strange now. All of
Yeah,
those
Tamissa's
guys
in that second book.
Yeah, all
passed
gone.
away.
Yeah.
Sonny Boy was
Those
the
children
last
she
one to pass.
raised,
He died a year before
Freddie's
last, I think.
daughter.
Because he was in the nursing home with my daughter,
Mhm.
So touched by
and
it.
she died
About Tamissa.
last
Now,
summer.
Now Freddie was really her niece's son.
My dad didn't hardly let you take my picture
I
of
knew
him,
she
but
died, but I didn't know it was her niece's
Well, it's
son.
her niece's
Which
son.
niece was that?
One of her brothers, the one that had a bunch of kids.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Helen. You know Little Helen?
I'm the only one in my
Okay.
family that went to Dunbar and Oak Mulligan
Well,
rather than
this-
Biggs, so my brothers and
Well,
sisters know all
these
the
are kids
Biggs.
from around Beggs. Well,
Uh-huh.
anyway, one of the sisters, she had to go to Clinton because she had TB.
Oh.
And Freddie was a baby.
Uh-huh.
So she took Freddie and kept him at that time.
Uh-huh.
And then when she came back, the sister wanted him back, but Tamissa and
Ralph had gotten so attached to him,
Yeah,
they wanted to keep him.
Uh-huh.
Because they only had the one son,
I know.
and so they wanted to keep him. So that's when they went and adopted him.
Yeah.
And kept Freddie.
And then they
raised
did the
Freddie.
same thing with Toya, well, the
Did
second one.
Oh, did
The
they?
girl, they had another, they adopted a little girl and raised her.
Well, I didn't know
Oh,
about
yeah,
her.
yeah.
That
She's
came
got,
later.
she's got a lot of children too.
Mhm. That came later.
Uh-huh.
But she sure did.
Well, Teresa was a
She's had the
sweet
one.
person.
She's had the one
I
sister,
remember.
and Marvin
Okay.
is the son of the sister.
Oh, okay.